The chamber was dimly lit, with the only source of light coming from a flickering bulb that hung precariously from the ceiling. It was damp and musty, with a pungent smell that made it hard to breathe. In one corner of the room was a battered armchair, and tied to it was a young woman, her hands and feet bound tightly with rough rope. The woman had been snatched from the bustling streets of downtown Darkshire, where no one had noticed her disappearance. She had been shoved into a car and brought to this place of horror, which was located in the outskirts of the city. Her abductor was a man with cold, empty eyes and a twisted smile. He stood in front of her, sharpening a knife with a whetstone, the sound of metal against stone echoing through the room. The woman tried to scream, but her mouth was covered with duct tape. She looked around the room frantically, hoping for any chance of escape, but saw none. The door was locked, and the only window was barred from the outside. She was helpless. The man approached her, the knife glinting in the dim light. He leaned in close and whispered, "You're going to play a little game with me." He traced the blade across her cheek, leaving a thin red line in its wake. The woman's heart raced as she tried to keep her breathing steady. She knew she had to fight with all her might if she wanted to survive this nightmare. The man stepped back and picked up a small box from the floor. He opened it to reveal a collection of tools, each one more grotesque than the last. The woman's eyes widened in terror as she realized the true intent of this game. The man smiled as he selected his first instrument of torture, a pair of rusty pliers. He grabbed hold of one of the woman's fingers and twisted it, causing her to cry out in agony. He then began to slowly pull the nail off, strand by strand, until it was completely removed. The woman's screams echoed through the room as the man continued to torture her. He extracted teeth, cut off fingers, and carved into her flesh. The pain was unbearable, but somehow she managed to stay alive. Days turned into weeks as the torture continued without end. The woman was a mere shell of her former self, her body broken and battered. But still, she fought on. One day the man left the room, leaving the door unlocked for the first time since she'd been taken. The woman knew this might be her only chance at freedom. She crawled towards the door, using every ounce of strength she had left. As she reached the door, she fumbled with the lock, her shaking fingers barely able to work. Finally, the door swung open, and she stumbled out into the sunlight. She collapsed onto the ground, her tears mixing with the dirt as she sobbed in relief. The torture was finally over, but the horror would never truly leave her. She would carry the scars, both physical and emotional, with her for the rest of her life. And the man who had done this to her was still out there, waiting to take his next victim.